Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. An organization in the borderland is working to connect youth and underserved communities to the outdoors to help create a more diverse future for public land conservationists. Here to share more about the mission and the work of the Nuestra Tierra Conservation Project is Angel Peña, president of the organization. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Peña.
Anthony, good to see you, sir, and thank you for this opportunity. Absolutely.
It's great to have you. If we could start off, if you could share with us a little bit about your mission with Nuestra Tierra.
Yes, absolutely. So the team over here at the Nuestra Tierra Conservation Project wakes up every morning really trying to tackle barriers, ensure that frontera communities, borderland communities, our comunidades, not only have access to the outdoors, but have access to the public land management process. We do this through education, advocacy, and people power, man. Go ahead, please.
You bring up an interesting point. Because there's been criticism in the outdoor agencies and also the outdoor industry about it not being diverse enough and reflecting the United States and the diversity that it has. What are your thoughts on this, and how does your organization try to address that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Because you're my gente, right? This is my community. I'm going to be completely honest. I've been working in the conservation space for over a decade, right? And initially, I was really excited to be and have the opportunity to advocate for our beautiful places and for our dense culture and traditions. And then took a couple years, almost a decade, to identify that I might have been tokenized. I might have been the articulate brown kid, especially over a decade ago. I was much more articulate, much more younger. And I wasn't wearing this COVID-19 poundage that I think is real for many people down here. But in all seriousness, that's why we pulled the Nuestra Tierra Conservation Project together. It is a brown idea, led by raza, led by gente, staffed 100% by those people on the ground who have everything to lose. And so we're very excited to be able to no longer tokenize, but simply elevate and amplify those voices on the ground that live there and have everything to lose, Anthony. Yeah.
Share with us a little bit about the history of your organization. I know, it was just founded in the last few years, and I've been able to report on some of the events that you've held. Can you share with us a little bit about the history and events that you hold and how you connect with youth in our community?
Absolutely. So we started off with a simple objective to ensure that our community youth had access to the outdoors and that we were able to break down barriers such as equipment or just transportation is something that's very real. Even though that here in Doña Ana County, we are surrounded by public lands, transportation is something very real that our youth can access, right? And so that's kind of how we got our chops going and built a little bit of our reputation, especially now during COVID-19. It was hard to engage and cultivate community in the good old-fashioned way of just filling the truck up with all sorts of people and creating adventures, right? And building memories with one another. 2020 really allowed us the space to kind of acknowledge and call out that we as a single organization could never truly empower and get our youth out in the numbers that we needed to, right? So we began to look at the tools in our tool belt. And that's when we identified as policy. Politics is a real answer. So we proudly pulled together the team, that authentic team built on real relationships that introduced and then secured the first of its kind New Mexico Outdoor Equity Fund, where it's a state program where its sole purpose is to help get kids outside. This is a state grant program that can provide resources for anything from appropriate hiking shoes, socks, to putting gasoline or diesel in that car, in that troca, to break down and to create access. Yes, sir.
And so New Mexico lawmakers created the Outdoor Recreation Department, the Equity Fund, and have been able to help fund events and organizations and support organizations like yours and throughout the state of New Mexico. Can you kind of give us a better understanding of the Equity Fund and why it's needed in our state?
Yeah, absolutely. So the New Mexico Outdoor Equity Fund was built by visionary leaders, that were working in these communities and had identified and really understood the need and how to fill that gap. And so that's when the New Mexico Outdoor Equity Fund was created. And a vision without resources is little more than a hallucination, Anthony, right?
Yeah.
I think we can all admit that. And when we identify that the need was much more greater than the state capacity at the time, we worked really hard with communities, especially off the I-25 corridor, to tell that story and elevate that story. And just this year, we were able to, I think, quadruple the resources within the New Mexico Outdoor Equity Fund, so we can get tens of thousands of kiddos out on the ground in real ways, learning about cultura and tradition here in 2021.
Now, when you're able to do that, when you're able to connect youth with the public lands that we have in our region, what does that do? What does that offer the next generation in our area?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I guess just a few stories come out. Back in 2011, before the Nuestra Tierra Conservation Project was a thing, but the idea and that team was pulling itself together. We were working with overlooked youth, man, a couple of high school dropouts, and mostly prioritized our outreach efforts there to the colonias. We were engaging them in archaeology. We were looking through the boundaries of what is now the Organ Mountain Desert Peaks National Monument to really help identify what the resources were out on the ground. I can tell you, we had a young woman back in 2011 who was still a high school student, who her dream was, after that experience, to go to Texas Tech and be a New Mexico wildlife biologist, so she could also continue to help to tell the story and break down those barriers of representation. That was her goal in 2011. I'm proud to check in that she is wrapping up her graduate degree in biology, and her goal is to still come back to Doña Ana County and work in her community to continue to show people that this is our land and we've been here, we've always been here, and we will be here, and that it's our duty to ensure that we're able to tell the story, right? So it's exciting to see it grow over the years.
Well, those stories are certainly inspiring. I'm kind of curious a little bit about how you're able to continue with this effort. What are the challenges that you see? Now, you mentioned, economics, you mentioned transportation. What other challenges are there in place in front of you when it comes to connecting youth and the next generation to the outdoors and our public lands?
Anthony, it's simple, man. Representation. Lack of representation. Folks just don't see themselves. Our kiddos just don't see themselves filling these positions, these executive positions that really help direct the way our public lands and waters are managed. And so we are working every day to ensure that folks see themselves at all different levels. So not only here on the ground, just getting kids outside, but now Nuestra Tierra is really focused at the national level, working to create policy, right? To add tools to the tool belt that really break down and encourage our youth to take that next step because they see themselves doing it. So representation, Anthony, I think couldn't be overstated, sir. Yeah.
So, obviously representation an issue. I see a movement of sorts happening on social media anyways with different organizations similar to yours, with similar missions, getting out to the outdoors, connecting people to the outdoors, but also advocating for policies that help make it easier for people to connect to the outdoors. Can you kind of share with us what we're seeing right now across the country with organizations with similar missions like yours?
Yeah, two words come to mind: authenticity. I have seen authenticity protect mountains dozens of times across the country in real ways. And then relationships, real relationships that matter. It's fun to see that we have friends, the Nuestra Tierra Conservation Project, and other partners like the Friends of Oregon Mountain Desert Peaks have friends who have now been hired in this new administration because the new Secretary of the Interior, Congresswoman Deb Haaland, or former Congresswoman Deb Haaland from northern New Mexico, is really at the table and leading an initiative and really calling out that authenticity and relationships really matter. And she has hired her staff that represents those diverse and broad communities across our nation. And so I see this authenticity and these friends really taking the lead and holding hands and showing how policy should be created. Go ahead, Anthony. Sorry.
Now, you brought up obviously the historic nomination of Secretary Haaland and what that means to the area. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about that and about how significant of an appointment that was?
It cannot be overstated that now Secretary Deb Haaland, the first Indigenous woman to ever hold such a position, has really has a lived experience as us as New Mexicans can really relate to. Right? That where our community means more than those talking points often, and Secretary Deb Haaland is bringing and walking the walk, not only bringing these fancy words or a new proposal, a way of doing business. Secretary Haaland is really leading by example and hitting the ground running and ensuring that at all levels within her administration, that her staff looks like the communities that they're trying to elevate and amplify and serve at the end of the day. So it's good fun. It's beautiful to watch.
Federal lawmakers helped put together the Great American Outdoors Act, and that was able to get passed and signed. What will that do for our community? I know it will be able to provide about $1.9 billion for maintenance of critical infrastructure in public lands, facilities as well, national parks, forests, wildlife refuge places, and recreation areas. And what can you kind of tell us about what that's going to do for our region?
Yes, and just wanted to call out and Native American and Indian American schools. And so, again, just the way that we are seeing real action from a real representative hit the ground, someone with real lived experiences. And so the way that is going to look for us here in the state of New Mexico, this landmark conservation legislation will, yes, use revenues to help tear down that backlog of infrastructure. Here in the state of New Mexico, we are public land rich, and it's exciting to be able to ensure that we are able to take that next step as a state to help create access and create more comfortability, more comfortable mobility for many of our New Mexicans here.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, just access to places and making it easier. I mean, that's something that I was kind of shocked at when I first moved here. Obviously, the amount of public lands in New Mexico really takes you back, and that's something to experience for anybody. But following your organization and doing some reporting on events that they've done, taking people out to fish, something as simple as that in our public lands, and talking to young people about their experiences, and then finding out that this was the first time that they were able to cast a line and go fishing and connect to public lands. And not only them, but also sometimes their parents. This is the first time that they were actually able to go to experience like what is life like on our public lands and the outdoors. That's something that I think some folks who may be watching this program may be a little bit surprised about exists in our communities. So what are some things that we can all do to become more aware of this kind of barrier, and how can we improve access to our public lands for all New Mexicans?
No, man, that's gosh, that's the $1 million question, I think, Anthony, for sure. But I think right now, what really resonates is with one of the last fishing trips before 2020. Feel like we lost some time with our community there. But before 2020, one of the really stories that really resonated with me, we took a group of youth and familia and community up to Caballo Lake. And there was an abuelita there with their kiddos. And she told me, ¿sabes qué, mijo? I haven't been here. I haven't done this in years. And it kind of broke my heart because she was out there with her grandchildren. And so it really was a powerful time for her and a space for her to say, thank you to introducing this or reintroducing our family back into our culture and tradition. And so that's something that is powerful, man, and gives me the goosebumps every time. And then one last thing, just in Castro Range, another one of our national priorities, Congresswoman Escobar, she's looking to introduce the Castro Range National Monument legislation here soon, just there in El Paso. They had been working to get thousands of high schoolers out from their local school district, the El Paso Independent School District. And 92% of these thousands of kiddos that they were able to get out had never even been on Castro Range. And if you know El Paso, Trans Mountain bisects Castro Range. It's where the archaeology museum is. It's where the poppies overtake the backdrop of Ciudad El Paso. And so it's just heartbreaking, man. And then just to answer your question, how we do it, well, it's simple. You just look to make memories with your family. You just prioritize your neighbors, your community, and making memories. And the land speaks for itself.
One other thing, though, is, you mentioned that you're working with, people at the federal level, people in Congress. I've also seen that with your organization. You've been able to introduce members of the community to their elected legislators and take them into the outdoors and have those shared experiences. When you do that, what does that create? What kind of community does that build?
A powerful one, an authentic one, one that's beyond talking points, Anthony. We see, especially in this political landscape, especially over the last 4 years, where folks just can provide inauthentic answers that really do not put the community first. And so being out on the land speaks for itself. The land truly helps us create and cultivate that community that means something. Those are those memories that my kiddos are absolutely talking about. They're talking about the discada, the carne asada. And then they're like, oh, that one hike, Dad, like, yeah, man, that's what it's about. It's about friends and community. So just getting out on the land does all the talking, Anthony. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about another effort that your organization has been involved with in conservation, and that is protecting the Gila River. Can you share with us the work that you've been doing with that and why you feel it's needed?
So the Gila River is the last free-flowing river in New Mexico. It is one of the last free-flowing rivers in the country, and provides clean water to not only Silver City, right, but to the communities of Hayward, Burley, Santa Clara, Pinos Altos, those folks who are a little more rural and don't always have access to those decision makers. But the Gila really provides just a way to continue the way of life out there for those communities. For me personally, that's where me and my eldest, she's 13 now. That's where we go turkey hunting, man. That's where we harvest trout, and we have a little discada with friends and family. The same trout that have been there genetically for thousands of years. It's a beautiful way to just continue to share how special New Mexico is to my kids, to all three of them. And then additionally, of course, is those communities of Santa Clara, Bayard, Hurley, Pinos Altos, everyone in Doña Ana County. And then, of course, as it flows down to Deming and Luna County. So tons to lose. What our work has been there, we've been providing and simply working to elevate and amplify the voices, the local voices. And in this state legislature, we were able to take a huge step forward. We're no Gila diversion. We're no longer millions of dollars will be prioritized and put in a bucket to help a handful of families, but rather prioritize Southwest New Mexico as a whole. As we know, water's brutal, man. I mean, Anthony, we live in Las Cruces. Our river only flows a couple months out of the year. It's a real thing. And I'd hate to continue that tradition of ignoring southern New Mexico by damming up our last free-flowing river.
Now, I'd like to talk with you a little bit more about the outdoor industry. During this pandemic, we've seen so many people flock to the outdoors, to public lands. The outdoor industry generates billions of dollars a year. What do you think is really missing with the outdoor industry when it comes to understanding the diverse cultures that we have here in the United States?
Representation. Hello. That's the first one. I hate to call out those big names, but where's our nearest REI or Patagonia, Anthony? Here in Doña Ana County. How far do you have to drive to get to one of those?
Oh, you're going to travel some hours.
You're going to travel some hours, right? And additionally, when you go to their websites, who do you see on there? A bunch of Montanans. One of my best friends lives in Montana. I have nothing against Montanans, but just to call out that above and beyond the prices, I mean, economy's economy, put that aside. But representation or lack thereof is something real and a big barrier. It's uninviting for communities, I was just out camping with a group of youth out in the boot heel, socially distanced, of course, in appropriate ways. But equipment was a real conversation we had to have, to ensure that these folks not only had access to these places, but that they were comfortable and that they felt welcome, right? And equipment's a big deal. And so hopefully with this new political landscape, with the fact that I'm just going to call it out, Anthony, that brown people are trending right now, right? People of color are trending. And so it's an opportunity to really, or provides us with an opportunity to really hopefully point us in the right trajectory, right? So from where our policymakers to our outdoor recreation economies, or to our outdoor industry folks all kind of identify the need and importance of representation and access.
Okay, now obviously everyone's life has changed in the past year due to the pandemic. How has your organization been able to thrive on through this pandemic when it's been tough to really connect with people and take them to the outdoors when so many things have been closed?
Absolutely. That was something we weren't planning on, and we had to do a lot of rolling with the punches, right? That's when we took the time to call out that policy is a real big thing. It's something that matters, and it can really affect the lives of millions. So after our success of the New Mexico Outdoor Equity Fund, and then after the learning that we did, we retooled ourselves and pulled together a broad and diverse group of individuals and organizations from across the country to look at what a national outdoor equity fund can look like. Senator Heinrich here, our senior senator here in the state of New Mexico, has committed to roll this thing out. We've been trying to hold him back. He's been chomping at the bit to introduce this thing, but we want to ensure that it's rooted in community and really identifies and breaks down those barriers of the way the rubber meets the road, right? And so the Outdoor Future initiative that we're calling it Future standing for Fund for Underrepresented Tribal, Urban, and Rural Equity Act, will do exactly what the New Mexico Outdoor Equity Fund does. Simply empower local communities, organizations, and driven individuals to take their communities out, to identify, call out, and then break down those barriers to ensure that their youth and their gente could experience everything that the outdoor has to offer. And one last thing, just maybe a little too technical, but something I'm very proud of, is that we're also looking at ways that we can ensure that private and federal funds can be resourced to ensure that all communities, not only federally recognized communities or tribes, but ensure that all communities truly have the access and the ability to break down their local barriers to the outdoors.
Okay, we just have a little bit over a minute left, but I'd like to give you an opportunity to let our audience know how they can get in contact with your organization and find out more information.
Thank you, Anthony. First, thank you for this opportunity, sir. And yes, you can bug me, you can contact me, we can go for a hike. We are at Nuestra Tierra Conservation Project. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I think we have a lot LinkedIn nowadays. So we're all pro, Anthony. We're ready to go. And we need little excuse to get out with our community. So just bug us for a good time, and we're always down.
Okay, just about 30 seconds left, but what do you have planned for this upcoming summer now that things are slowly starting to reopen?
Well, turkey hunting with my daughter. I tell you what, it's been a lot of work. Me and my daughter were running out on the 15th. We're going to do some scouting in Lincoln County. We're going to drive up to White Peaks Wilderness, where it's absolutely going to hang out with friends in the Gila. But that's what we're doing, man. Family first, for sure. We're going to enjoy this beautiful springtime.
Okay, well, we want to thank you so much for joining us. Angel Peña is president of the Nuestra Tierra Conservation Project. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anthony. Truly, sir. Appreciate y'all. Bye-bye.
And we want to thank you for joining us on another episode of Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time.